This is the Turnbull and Pipkin show, or the Pipkin and Turnbull show. I haven't done that before.
Right?
Okay. So it's a new month. That's right. It's December 4th, 2019. This is episode 8. Welcome, everyone. Hope you had an awesome Thanksgiving. Just excited to be back and talking some sports and mainly some football tonight. And
hmm
got a great show in front of us. What we got tonight, Mr. Turnbull?
All right, tonight, man, we got the power rankings. We look at the NFL power rankings and some moving around on that, and then we're gonna take a look at the NFC playoff picture. If the playoffs started tonight, we're gonna look at the teams that'd be playing, and then we're going to look at the college football playoffs and the top four that are going to be representing. It looks like as of right now in the college football playoffs. So it's gonna be a good night.
Yeah. So first of all, let's take a look at, like we said, we're going to take a look at these power rankings. But I want to get into the one game in particular, and that's the Baltimore versus 49ers game that spoke a
hmm
lot of where everything's kind of standing right now. You had basically the two top teams going into that week, power ranking wise. A lot of similarities between the 49ers and the Ravens team. Um, Had a great matchup. It was a
hmm
great game. A lot of things kind of played out. Jamie, what were some of your thoughts on that game?
I mean, first I thought like this is gonna be the Super Bowl preview. I just liked how both teams played. And Baltimore, man, they just seem dangerous. And the 49ers, I still think their offense is the weakest link of that team, but their defense is of the one of the best, if not the best, in the NFL. And I would definitely be okay seeing those two go at it again um, on our at the
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that what I was saying is what I think the 49ers did a good job against Lamar is containing him and trying to make him a little
hmm
bit more one dimensional, even though there were a couple plays where you're going to have Lamar getting out the outside, getting his runs in. But they did a great job of trying to make him go back to being a one dimensional quarterback, which is the only way
hmm
that you'll have success against Lamar if you do try to contain him,
hmm
if you do just try to make him a pocket passer.
hmm
Granted, the weather wasn't great for either team. And I do know that
hmm
that plays into it. So that actually probably plays probably a little bit more into Baltimore's favor. And that's what I kind of
hmm
even saw in the game with, when you got Ingram and then you got Lamar Jackson and Hollywood out there. Definitely kind of plays to more of that advantage. Um, yeah, it's still under fire. I would say Jimmy Garoppolo, Jimmy G, still under
hmm
fire because there we haven't seen him come up with anything in kind of big moment games.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just been lackluster performances.
hmm
And I kind of go back to the Seahawks game. I mean, he did enough to put his team into a position. I will give him credit for that. But a lot of the times where you're needing him to make a play, he just there it doesn't seem like he's gotten to that next level. Just based on
hmm
what I've kind of watched from when they play these top more elite type teams. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's what you were kind of getting to is we just don't know about this offense still. Um,
hmm
and when you get into the playoffs, it's basically a new season. That's why we always say the playoffs are just the start of a new season. Almost in any sport, it's like that, and especially for football, where
hmm
you've only got 4 quarters. You don't have where you've got a best out of 7. You've got 4 quarters, and that you got
Yeah.
that time to make a difference. And so, um, yeah, can this defense get them where they may get a bye, but I'm not sure if the Seahawks keep winning, they may not get that bye. So their defense has to come up big in the 3 games leading up to the Super Bowl, meaning 4 games in a row.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
will they have enough offensive power when you get to that point to win those 4 games?
Yeah. I mean, right now it's looking like if, like we said, if the playoffs, and we'll get to more of the NFC playoff picture later, but right now it seems like they'd be playing Dallas, and a lot of people have already wrote Dallas off, because they haven't beat anybody that's got like a 500 record. But we know that they have the weapons, and we know they have the skill to go toe to toe with a 49ers team. And so, a lot of people are like, man, they're gonna if they start in the wild card, they're gonna breeze their way to the NFC playoff or the NFC championship. And I don't believe it with that offense. I don't. I just like, besides George Kittle, I really can't name another 49er skill player. You know, I just can't. And so they're not memorable. I can tell you a couple of their defensive players, but I just can't name, besides Jimmy G, Kittle. That's the offense right there.
Yeah.
And so they have a great record, and at the beginning of the season I was like, hey, these guys are good, and now we're getting down to it, and they're sitting at oh, I can't remember their record right now, but they're sitting, like 2 losses, I think,
10-2. Yeah.
yeah,
10-2.
10-2,
Fran. Yeah.
and so they can win games, but when you get into the playoffs, it's 0-0. Like, your record doesn't matter anymore. It got you here. Now you need to win some more games and get to the ultimate prize. And that
Yeah.
offense, I just don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, it looks like they've definitely got some talent on offense. It just doesn't seem like it's all coming together yet. And like for
Mm-hmm.
example, you've got Debo Samuels as a wide receiver, rookie wide receiver. You got Emmanuel Sanders that got is part of the wide receiving core there. So I think you've got the pieces on offense. It's just like it never seems to fully come together. And I don't,
Yeah.
you don't know if you can accredit that all to Jimmy G, what the Ravens were doing, what the Seahawks are able to do, because it looks like when
Mm-hmm.
you get an athletic front seven like you have in the Seahawks and the a more athletic. Not saying that every NFL team has their athletic guys, but even more so for the Ravens, and I would say the Seattle, especially that defensive line, able to get some speed rushes in there as well. Um,
Yeah.
so the 49ers are just one big interesting team to me because more so and more so throughout the season, they're proving to you that they belong. But at
Mm-hmm.
times, when they come up in these biggest games, there's a lackluster performance from one, definitely more so on the offense. And so, do you got enough to get you there? And that's the hard question, I think, at this point. But when I look at
Mm-hmm.
the Ravens, and even when I look at some other teams that we're going to check out the power rankings, the next team that kind of stands out and trying to figure out, where they're at is what's up with New England these days. There looks to be a whole bunch of frustrations on the New England side, even at a 10-2 record. Which you
Mm-hmm.
could say their defense has even been more so impressive than 49ers defense, just statistically wise, and what they've been able to do. You would think that they'd be able to, for once, be able to figure it out also on the offensive side, but it looks like there's this constant struggle between Philip Dorsett and Tom Brady and kind of the other wide receivers, and all you've really
Yeah.
got is Julian Edelman at that point. So I'm not
Yeah.
sure, and that's where the crazy talks of just saying we need to get Antonio Brown back, we need to get something going on offense. It's starting to happen in New England because it doesn't look like these receivers with Tom Brady. It has looked like for the first time that it looks like it's a real issue for New England.
Yeah. New England, yeah. I I think Houston last weekend really. um, just uh, outplayed them and just showed their weaknesses. They every way that you can beat New England, Houston did it. And a lot of people are even saying like maybe their defense is overrated. Their offense. I think Gronk retiring. I think that took Brady's security blanket away, and then you only have Edelman, and maybe he just doesn't fully trust his other wide receivers like he has his receivers in the past. N'Keal Harry, he's a good wide receiver, and he's shown flashes. Philip Dorsett, he's a good wide receiver, but really when it comes to consistent wide receivers, he has Edelman. And
Well, if you can't be on the same page with your quarterback, that's where the
mhm,
issue. I mean, and
yeah,
when you got Mohamed Sanu, who you're expecting to make some big catches where he's just dropping it,
yeah,
um, and where your team is always it's looked like they want it to be able to be set up for passing quick passes, but that's just not what's happening on offense this year. It's not that Patriot offense where they're just gonna 5 yard you down the field. It's just
mhm,
that's not. I don't know if it's a route running. I'm not sure the scheme wise. They just don't have enough of the run game, and that's true too. In the past, you think about
mhm,
them bringing in their three running backs and them able to average getting them about 4 yards a carry. But
mhm,
when you stifle from that happening, that's what I think's been hurting them too. Their run game is definitely weakened as well compared to other years, which is kind of surprising to me because you with James White, Sony Michelle, and Damian Harris, you think you'd be able to get some type of running game going in New England.
yeah, and they have Rex Burkhead too, and I
Right,
remember him from the AFC Championship game. He ran all over us.
right.
And it's just different now. And I don't know if they're trying to make Brady do too much, and they're not trusting the run game. I don't know if the line just isn't what it was, and they're just not able to hold the blocks like they have in the past. I don't know. New England's one of the biggest. Like, how are they 10-2? You know, like how did
It,
they make it this far?
it's the same reason with the 49ers though. It's the same
Yeah.
thing is that defense has carried them to this 10-2 record, but is it
Hmm.
going to be enough? You know, could they
They play Kansas City this
Yeah, that's what I'm
Sunday, so
saying.
we're gonna
Are
see.
you going to be able to win a shootout? Like if
Hmm.
but does I mean does KC have enough to overcome a good defense, or are we just overhyping a one loss that they've had? Or I mean, it's looked
Yeah.
consistently like this is a problem for New England. I mean, like you
Hmm.
said, this week is going to be a great week to see where the Chiefs and New England is at. Like
Yeah.
this is what's going to tell us how a lot of this is going to go down, which leads
Hmm.
me to what the Chiefs were able to do, like you had just mentioned against Oakland. I would say that was one of their best wins of the year, just a team win, and the way that they
Yeah.
did it,
Oh, yeah.
both on the defensive side and the offensive side.
Yeah.
Is the game? I believe is the game going to be in Arrowhead or New England?
It's gonna
For
be at Foxborough.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
they'll have home field advantage, but I don't know.
yeah. Um, but yeah, that's where I felt where KC was at is I think they had a lot of health back. I think they had some guys that were more healthy. Things seemed to be clicking more
Hmm.
against Oakland. Uh, Honestly, I was kind of shocked at how poorly Oakland and the mistake that Oakland made. I really
Hmm.
thought it was going to be a much more of a fight, but it looked like they just weren't prepared as well. I
Hmm.
That's what I really feel when I watched the Raiders play against the Chiefs. It was the one time where I really just felt like they were just unprepared
Yeah.
for what was going to go on.
Yeah. Tyron Matthew said he's like, we knew everything Derek Carr was gonna do, And it's like, is that on the quarter? Is that on Derek or is that on Gruden? When the defense can look at what you guys are in, and just be like, okay, yeah, he's throwing it to this guy. Well, let's get ready. And I mean, the, the Raiders, they have all this young talent, and they have a good coach. I just feel like they're a big question mark, because I feel like they're better than a 6-6 record. I personally feel. We swept them this year, and I I have a couple friends that are Raiders fans, and like, so I just hear them talk, and they they're just a big, like, I always feel like they're gonna do better than what they do every year. And I just don't know if that's on Derek or if that's on Gruden at this point, because it's just they always underperform every season. They've went to the playoffs once in, I think, like 16 years, and that's just unacceptable.
Yeah.
And I don't know. The Raiders are just a team that I love to beat, but I always feel like they should be better than what they are.
Right. Yeah. Based on seemingly talent that they've got around on the Raiders.
Hmm.
Um, you know, there's a couple of 7-5 teams that I'm looking at on the power rankings too. You got Tennessee, and this is ESPN power rankings that we're looking at. You got Tennessee at 12, and you got Pittsburgh at 14. And right now, I think the Bills, like a couple of weeks we were talking about, and the way that the Bills have been playing, they've been eking out really great, good wins. I mean, and
Hmm.
make deserving that wild card spot, and that's I just based on a 9-3 record, I think you can already kind of slot in the Bills for
Hmm.
this year. But I'm kind of interested in the sixth spot in the AFC, and right now, what it kind of looks like the front runners are between Tennessee and the Steelers, which they both
Hmm.
look like they're starting on both sides of it. Both of those teams are starting to figure a lot of identity about who they are.
Yeah.
What's interesting with what the Titans are doing with Ryan Tannehill starting to come on. The running game for the Titans looks phenomenal. And so,
Hmm.
especially this time of year when you can get your running game going, is huge. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, so I really like what Tennessee is starting to do on the offensive side. And look, I think they've got with Mike Variable, they've got enough defensive schemes and guys that can get you there.
Yeah.
But even more impressive to me is what the Steelers defense has been able to do. The
Hmm.
only reason this team has any shot at this playoffs is this incredible defense that Pittsburgh has somehow thrown together.
Hmm.
And each week to be honest with you, I know I'm a Pittsburgh fan, I'm a Steelers fan, but watching them week by week overcoming, where your worst week has a lot of it had to do with no offense, but that 21-7 loss against the Browns a couple of weeks ago. But ever since then, and even what they did against the Browns this week, really impressed by what the Steelers have been able to do on defense with especially all the young talent that they've got going. So
Hmm.
those are two teams where I really don't. I mean, any team in the playoff, but these two up and coming teams. The what's cool about this year, I feel like on the NFC and AFC, it's one of the most wide open years where we're like, may not be New England this year. It maybe
Yeah.
somebody may be running for the money this year, which
Hmm.
I love the parity this year. And even last year it started happening that way. We just, it just, New England just found a way like always.
Yeah.
But even more so between last year and this year, there's a lot more parity in the NFL, which we hadn't had a couple years in the past. I
Yeah.
remember talking to you about 3 years ago where I just was kind of getting bored with the NFL just because there wasn't any parity. It just felt like it was inevitable what was going to happen.
Yeah.
It's very predictable NFL, and it's starting to not be that way anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I love that the Bills like are 9-3, and if there's anybody that I feel can beat New England, I would say it would be them. They should have beat, I don't know about should have, but they could have beat New England. The start of the season, I think New England only beat them by a point, like 16-17 or something like that, and so. I love that the Bills are playing good football. I was a big skeptic of their quarterback, Josh Allen, and he's proven me wrong this whole season. He still throws some ducks, but
Right,
he definitely gets it there. He's got very very good arm strength, and I love that Frank Gore is still playing at a very high level.
right.
Um, love when my Miami Hurricane players still play very very good.
Yeah,
But I love that the Bills, the Titans. I'm still holding a little grudge against them because
that's
they
right.
got they stole a win in
They,
Arrowhead,
that's right.
and but I love that Mike Vrabel, who used to be a Chiefs player, is coaching a very good team, and doing it with a guy that Miami didn't want, and I'm sure right now Miami would probably take back in a heartbeat. Um,
Right,
but the Steelers, like their offense just kind of makes me like I I just sometimes I just don't have any faith in that offense, and then they play very well. Their defense is great, and I think could carry them in the playoffs. But I think like a lot of people are talking about Coach of the Year right now, and I think Tomlin needs to be in that category and win that award because you guys started out like 1-4, and now you're 7-5, and that's Tomlin. That's his coaching. And at the beginning of the season, I was like, I don't know if this will be if he'll be back next year. And you were like, yes, he will. But I have renewed faith in Mike
right,
Tomlin as a head coach because he's taken, he hasn't had Juju in a couple weeks. Lev Bell left. Um, Brown left. Big Ben's out for the season. He's basically just threw some players in and was like, all right, here's what we're gonna do, and they're looking like a possible playoff team, and I love that. You know, it's been such a really great year in the NFL. On the NFC and the AFC side. Nobody could have told you that the 49ers would be at the top of
right,
their conference.
right.
And
Yeah,
Seattle had a bad year last year. Green Bay had a bad year last year, and now they're all in the playoff picture. And so I've been loving this year so much more than I have in a couple of years.
well,
It's
and
just
the up
great.
the rise of even Lamar Jackson was, I
Hmm.
don't think anybody saw that coming. I think going into the season we were all skeptical of Lamar, and now we're
Hmm.
calling him the MVP pick at this point.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of unforeseen things. The last note on the Steelers. What I think is crazy is, if uh, I think the Steelers may have been in a couple of more Super Bowls if we had this defense, and if we had this defense and put it on the team that was put together 2 years ago with AB
Hmm.
and Le'Veon Bell before
Hmm.
all the drama with Juju, and you think about that
Yeah.
Pittsburgh team, that would have been an amazing team at that. But woulda, shoulda, coulda, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, that's in the
Woo.
past, man. But that would have been a team.
Yeah,
That would have been a
that would have
team.
been great.
But
That would have been great.
so moving on. So let's take a look at the NFC. A couple weeks back, we kind of looked at the AFC picture. Kind of, I think, kind of our top leaders are still where we had predicted. The wild card on the AFC is kind of flipped on a couple thoughts that we had. Um, but let's take a look at where we're at with the NFC, and I'll just start. We'll start with the one of the hardest, or the two hardest NFC divisions to decide on. The first being the NFC East. So the NFC East consists of Dallas, Philadelphia, Washington, and the Giants. So statistically, Dallas, Philadelphia, and Washington are still in contention to win this division, with the highest record of the Dallas Cowboys being 6-6. So,
Yeah.
Jamie, out of all of these teams, where do you think this is going to play out in the NFC East? Because
Man, all right. So I just need to get a dartboard, close my eyes, and throw it
right,
because they're all so bad. And what's sad is Dallas should be like 10-win team. Like they should not be 6-6 right now.
right,
They have all the talent in the world to be
paid big money,
above what they are.
paid
Yeah.
big money.
And it goes back to what we talked about a couple weeks ago. Did they overpay for Zeke? Yep. Are they going to overpay Dak? Yep. Are they going to overpay for Coop? Yep. And their defense is good, and they have good defensive players, but their offense is just not connecting. And so I think they'll be the playoff team. They'll win the division. Oh my goodness, Washington, they're a mess right now. They're still trying to figure out who their quarterback's going to be. Dwayne Haskins, I think. I hate to say it in his rookie year, but he kind of has bust written on his forehead.
Well, yeah,
Philly,
Washington kind of has bust written on their whole head.
yeah, yeah. It's hard to blame Dwayne Haskins. I think if you build around him, I think he'll be okay. Yeah, Philly. It's hard. Philly's another team that I feel should be up there at the 9-win, at least
right.
8-win category because they again have a good team, but their defense isn't good. I think we'll have to start talking about if Carson Wentz is the guy there, if they've overpaid him, because I mean he hasn't won anything. That was Nick Foles who just got benched in Jacksonville. So.
Right.
And the Giants, they're still trying to figure out everything. Eli Manning's looking to get a start, probably his farewell tour there. So
it's
they're
kind of
not
like
anything special, but
yeah, with the Carson Wentz situation, I almost feel like it's the situation that you kind of put, and I know it's not completely the same, but it kind of feels similar. You know, one week you said the Chiefs almost play better when Patrick Mahomes isn't there. You know, I would say the Eagles kind of fall into that a little bit. Like I feel like this whole team is shouldered on Wentz's performance, but
yeah,
the team doesn't have the strength on defense like it has. It doesn't have the strength on the offensive line like it did during the Nick Foles run. There's a lot of holes in their team besides just saying it's on Carson Wentz's shoulder. But I think it goes back to where you put so much pressure on Wentz to force this team into winning. The whole team just doesn't even look near, especially on defense. I think that's where the shocking thing is just on defense they just have not been able to put anything together. And I think they fall into that a little bit. So that's what I find interesting. I don't know what you think of how much that plays into it or not.
Yeah. I mean, I just think as a whole they're just not connecting. Hard to watch their games because you'll see, you know, a wide open wide receiver and Wentz just misses him.
Right.
Or then you'll see they'll go to a run play and they get stuffed, and it's just like it's really hard to watch the Eagles play because they have the talent. It's just not connecting, and I don't really put that on Peterson, their head coach. He's proven that he can get the team to where it needs to be. I just think the players need to start playing.
Yeah.
You know, playing to their level because I feel like they're playing down to their competition. And
Yeah.
because like I said, I believe with what they have, that's a 7 to 8 win team, and they're underperforming. And it's sad to see because you know what their potential is, and they showed their potential a couple years ago when they won the Super Bowl, and so you know it's there, but it's just not. They're just not synced up, and I don't really see them as winning the division because I think as a hot as of a mess as Dallas is, I think Dallas is more um, connected
Dallas
and will
is just talent wise is able to win the division. I don't think
yeah.
I think that's the only thing that's carrying them. Um, and
Hmm.
I think talent wise is the reason that they can get wins over Philadelphia, Washington, and the Giants. So
Yeah.
that's what's going to get them into the playoffs. And
Hmm.
so yeah, yeah, and I agree. I don't think Philadelphia just has enough, and their head-to-head matchups where Dallas has won. Um, I just don't think, like you were saying, I don't think the Eagles will have enough to get in there to win that division. Um,
Hmm.
just one last, I guess, one last thought, on Philadelphia. It's just Wentz is so he's the hardest in my mind. He's one of the hardest quarterbacks for me to figure out where I put this guy at, because there's times
Hmm.
where there's games where you're just like, man, this guy's legit. Like Wentz, he can run, he's
Hmm.
mobile, he's accurate, he's got all the tools. And then, like you said, there was a game I think last week or the week before where he misses the running back going, on just a RB
Hmm.
out, and he just totally overthrows him. Um,
Yep.
so that's what's tough about Wentz, and just yeah, it's just I don't know where like I put a Carson Wentz, because you know that this guy is uber talented. It's just you can't miss open guys. So anyway, so
Yeah.
we're both saying Dallas for the NFC East is what I'm understanding. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So moving on to the next kind of tricky division is the NFC North. Um, and granted, earlier at the start of this season, I was like, man, NFC North, you can put them all in, all playoff worthy. They're great. Um, and now some of them are starting to fall off. Especially, I think even more so than Detroit, Chicago has been the biggest surprise for me. You think
Hmm.
that Trubisky, out, a lot of pieces on Chicago's side would be able to kind of start coming together, but it just hasn't happened this year. And so
Yeah.
they're at 6-6, and this defense for Chicago, it's still great. I think the reason why they're still in games, for sure. But
Hmm.
they've had some lackluster moments as well. But it's mainly going back to Mitchell Trubisky, and the rest of the offense just have not had enough like last year to win games.
Yeah.
So that's why you got Minnesota and Green Bay, and a lot of people are liking where Minnesota is at. I'm still pretty skeptical of Minnesota,
Oh yeah.
just because of Kirk Cousins, just his up and down play. Um,
Hmm.
I think Minnesota's defense, ever since Mike Zimmer's been there, has been a really good defense, and good enough to probably even get them to the Super Bowl. I think that they have enough pieces to get them there. It's just,
Hmm.
do you have consistency on the offensive side? And that's huge, because
Yeah.
Kirk Cousins is just hot and cold kind of this whole year. But when he's going, they look like an extremely tough team to beat. But
Yeah.
and then at times they're just I think about the Chiefs game. They had a great opportunity without a Patrick Mahomes Chiefs team, and
Hmm.
played pretty poorly against the Chiefs.
Hmm.
And we said that was one of the best. But the Chiefs defense did come up. That was one of the better games the Chiefs defense played.
Yeah.
But they haven't been able on these key moments, kind of like with the 49ers. These key moments have not been able to pull through for the Minnesota squad. So with that being said, I I kind of like Green Bay still, and I know right now that they're leading it, but I
Mhm.
always go back. If you are unsure of a team, what's the last place you look at to do that checkbox, and that's Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers
Mhm.
will put you in a position to win the game, unlike any other one of the best quarterbacks to ever do that. You know, and
Yeah.
part of the reason Green Bay is where they're at is Aaron Rodgers. He's like Stephen A. Smith says, he's a bad man. Uh,
He's a bad
he's a
man.
bad man. So, so when you look at the final, and granted, I think Green Bay's run game and their defense are a lot better this year as well with Aaron Jones
Yeah.
and some of the pieces that they added on defense. Um, is part of the reason that they're at 9-3 now. I think the weapons, like throwing wise, wide receivers, I think that's been a little bit of the struggle for Aaron Rodgers, and why
Mhm.
that team sometimes struggle is I just don't think they're very strong at the wide receiver position. So that's something I would say. You know, I think they've got enough, but something that they would look at, like Jimmy Graham having so many misses and um,
Yeah.
drop balls and things like that. So, but
Mhm.
when you were it's kind of going down between Minnesota and Green Bay, I kind of got to give it to Aaron Rodgers at that point.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I agree 100% because like they're very similar in a lot of ways, but like you just can't whenever you're like, all right, the defenses match up really well, the offenses match up really well. The Minnesota's wide receivers are better,
Yeah.
um, but who do you have to give the edge to? It's always got to be Aaron Rodgers. You know, he the throws he can make, and just whenever he rolls out of the pocket, and I'm like, oh, don't let him run into that throw, and then they let him run into that throw, and he's got a touchdown, and it's like Cousins to me, like he'll have a 400-yard game, three touchdowns, no interceptions, and it's like, okay, maybe he's coming on. The next weekend he has a 200-yard game, four interceptions, and it's like, okay, maybe not, you know. And that's just kind of, I've never just been really confident in anything that Cousins has done because you'll see two different quarterbacks, you know, one week, and so if it comes down to Minnesota and Green Bay for that division, it's got to be Green Bay. You can't bet against
Right.
Aaron Rodgers. You
Yep.
just can't. You'll
Yep.
lose money.
Yep. So moving on to the NFC South, so we're both agreement Green Bay.
Yep.
NFC South, New Orleans has already clinched theirs, and the rest of the NFC South are pretty poor.
Yeah.
Pretty easy division this year in a lot of ways, but kind of I was kind of surprised at how Carolina Panthers kind of fell apart. I thought that they would be able to do a little bit more. Um,
Hmm.
so it's going to be interesting how these teams, you know, Tampa Bay, Carolina, and Atlanta, because you think about especially Carolina and Atlanta, these teams, especially Atlanta at 3-9 with
Hmm.
the offense and the deep, like man, that's crazy.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
no way Atlanta should be 3-9. Like
No.
Atlanta should be fighting for that division right along with the Saints.
Hmm.
That's how.
They have all the star power in the world to be up there
Yeah.
with the Saints, and
Yeah.
I think it's time for Dan Quinn to hit the road. I'm
Yeah.
really
That's just.
surprised that Carolina fired Ron, but I think Atlanta. I think
Yeah.
it's time Atlanta needs to kind of
That's
empty
just a
out that front office.
crazy fall for Dan Quinn if that's really the way it's going to go down. I mean, because you're
Yeah.
just talking 2 years of
Hmm.
him. 2 years when they did the Super Bowl run, telling how great Dan Quinn did a great job of coming from Seattle, building that defense, their offense coming together. So I don't know if you can just say it's just Dan Quinn. You know, it's just
Yeah.
I don't know. That's Atlanta's the strangest thing that's kind of happened this year with all that they've got.
Yeah.
So So yeah, so we got New Orleans. All right, so moving on to probably the toughest one to choose is who's coming out of the NFC West. We've
Mm-hmm.
got Seattle and San Francisco. So Seattle at 10-2, San Francisco at 10-2. So Jamie, I'm going to let you lead this one off.
Man, this division, I love this division. One reason is because the Rams are underperforming, and I love that because I've always thought they were overhyped and overrated. So one year, they played in the Super Bowl last year, and now they're, and so I'm loving that. Um, Cardinals are building. I think they'll be a force in 2 to 3 years. They need to build that team strongly around Kyler. Um, Seattle, I love Seattle, and I love Seattle because of Russell Wilson. He's a lot like Aaron Rodgers to me. He's so dangerous, and he can beat you with his legs. He can beat you with his arm, and a lot of people often forget about his arm, and he can launch that thing.
You can.
I love
Yeah.
um, I love Seattle's weapons. Tyler Lockett, man, nobody thought he was going to be a number one wide receiver, and he's putting up number one wide receiver numbers. He has games where he'll disappear, and that's something I think he can fix. Last game, I don't think he had a catch at all because I think he was fighting the flu, but he played. Um, and so I love Seattle. 49ers have been the team I've been watching all year. And we talked about them earlier in the show. Their offense is a bit of a question mark for me. Their defense, we're at the point in the season where defense wins championships. And that defense, I think, could win a championship.
Yeah.
But I'm
Yeah.
not saying that it's ready to beat a Russell Wilson led Seattle team.
Yeah.
So I'm taking Seattle for that division.
Yeah. What's crazy about Seattle is I'm gonna say kind of I believe Lamar will probably end up being the MVP, but the best quarterback this year has been Russell Wilson. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because you look at this offense, I mean Tyler Lockett. I mean he's good, but
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say he's a force at a wide receiver spot. He's just really good at route running, really good at syncing with what Russell's doing. But you look at the rest of this offense, like Russell's doing this with guys that I haven't heard of besides Tyler Lockett. The
Yeah.
rest of what they're doing with the core of this team. That's what's so impressive about this Seattle Seahawks, and what's so impressive about Russell Wilson's this year is he by far has, unlike any other guy in this league, has carried his team to 10-2. You
Yeah.
try to tell me differently. I name me a guy.
Patrick Mahomes.
Even I would still pick Russell Wilson. I'm telling you, man, because at least Patrick Mahomes has his unbelievable weapons. Like
Yeah. True.
there's nothing he doesn't have it. Like imagine if Russell Wilson had Tyreek Hill. Like just that would be crazy. Like or even
Or
Travis.
Kelsey.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
and they and why I say that is Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelsey were great, and Patrick Holmes just amplifies that for sure. And I'm just
Mm-hmm.
saying the best quarterback this year is Russell Wilson, and I would have said last year MVP is Patrick Mahomes, but this year what Russell Wilson's been able to do, I
Yeah.
I can't I I really can't find and the team that he's got around him. I It's been unbelievable that they're at 10-2 personally.
Mm-hmm.
I think Ravens personnel wise, even on their offensive line, their running back Mark Ingram has shown that that maybe New Orleans should have kept Mark Ingram because Mark Ingram's been playing like he's angry.
Yeah.
You watch Mark Ingram play like, and so I know that I would take Mark Ingram before I take Chris Carson, right? pretty
Yeah.
pretty
Oh
easily,
yeah.
So that's what's incredible to me is just this is for sure a Russell Wilson led team, and the reason that they are in this and possibly will win this division, quite likely to, um,
Hmm.
is because of number 3, Russell Wilson, has just been amazing. Um,
Yeah.
and and you talk about a guy like I could keep going about carrying the team, and that proved
Mm.
that last matchup, even though there was he made a mistake near the end before overtime, but still led him to come back. Still keeps putting them in positions to win. Um,
Yeah.
so I I I don't. It's it's gonna be so interesting. I think it's the last week. Is the last. Let me see when
Yeah.
the last. It's the last week of the. Um,
Yeah. Seahawks play Rams,
yeah,
Panthers, Cards, 49ers.
yeah. Um,
So it's gonna be a good game. That's gonna be a much must watch game for sure.
yeah. Man, I just don't know. Um, because I think San Francisco is just as a team, is better. But like I always said, is as a whole unit and it has a whole team besides Jimmy G. Because Russell literally has to carry Seattle. So um, maybe just to throw some flair into it, I may just go San Francisco for the NFC West.
Man, you gotta be like that, huh?
I will be like that. So I'll go.
You gotta look at it like this, okay? Because we always say it comes down to the quarterback. If the team matches up well, it comes down to the quarterback. Which quarterback has the experience to get his team to where it needs to go?
Yeah, it
Russell.
also but I think also with this where they're at schedule wise, because unlike you, I think the Rams are going to give them a test. This it's coming up, um, this upcoming week. Um, I just got to pull up where San Francisco's last 4 games are going to be.
Saints, Atlanta, Rams, Seattle.
Mm. So yeah, yeah, I would say Seattle has the easier schedule if we put it that way.
Yeah.
If you put it that
Yeah.
way, because that Saints 49ers game. So,
Yeah,
oh man,
that could be a potential NFC championship game right
yeah,
there. You know,
true. Based on
so
that,
yeah,
I may have to flip flop.
it's
I may have to go
hmm
back. Yep,
one
yep,
thing that I will give Jimmy G is who for a couple years when he got drafted, who was he learning from? The GOAT. He sat behind Tom Brady. He sat in those meeting rooms with Tom Brady. He sat and watched Tom Brady pick apart teams for a couple years.
yeah. I mean that's
So
true.
you I can't name a better quarterback to sit behind. I mean, you got Breeze, Rogers, Wilson, Mahomes, but if you're sitting in, I mean, but he just doesn't have the experience yet. He's never led this team to the playoffs
You know,
because he got hurt last year. I was at the game, and so he this is all new to him, and the
right?
playoffs are a different animal. This is single elimination. You lose, you have 4 quarters to move on and get closer to your dream. And if you mess up, that might be it.
Yeah,
And if I'm looking at it like, all right, who's got the better experience? It's got to be Russell. And
yeah,
I would take almost any of those quarterbacks in the NFC over Garoppolo. You got Breeze, Russell, Rodgers. I would
yeah.
take Garoppolo over
Well,
Dak.
I'm just I'm
And I
and
would,
I at kind of where I'm at. If you look at these two tied, is I'm kind of looking at the schedule. That's what flip flop me,
yeah.
because I just because I just don't know about that Saints game, and I don't know about Seattle. So it may just come down to, San Francisco may just have more losses just because they had a harder end run.
Yeah.
So it makes it interesting. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with Seattle then. So for the first wild card spot, obviously I'm gonna go San Francisco then.
Mm-hmm.
Um, who's your first wild card spot?
San Francisco.
Yeah. Um, and then so we kind of the second spot is kind of down to the Rams and Minnesota. I think, yep, that would be about who I would see getting in there because I don't think the Bears are gonna do anything.
They're
Uh,
sitting at 6-6, but they're just, I would say they're a third ranked team on that in that
yeah,
division. They're not going to beat the 49ers. They're not going to beat Seattle. Um, I don't know what the remainder of their games look like, but I don't see the Rams making the playoffs.
yeah. I yeah, it's just I need to see if I can pull up the schedule for it's definitely the Rams or Minnesota, and
Mm-hmm.
I would just
I would
say
I would go Minnesota.
yeah, because the Rams still have to play, I think, once again Seattle and San Francisco coming
Yeah,
up. So based on that, just schedule wise, like we both said, it's probably going to end up being Minnesota.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, so that's the look at the NFC. So kind of to finish up tonight, we're going to be talking just a little bit about what happened in college football. A lot of things happened. A lot of things are starting to take shape. The biggest one of the bigger headlines is this will be the first year where Alabama will not be in the playoffs. So, um, having a hard loss to Auburn, yeah, that one hurt.
To lose the way they did, I yeah. I don't know. Bama's gonna be okay. Bama, they're gonna be back next year. I would say they'll be back at in the top four next year. Man, I did see an interview today that Tua has not necessarily said he's gonna go into the NFL draft. That he's about 50-50 on it right now.
Yeah.
So that would be good for Bama if they could get Tua back, because the way Tua is looking at it is he doesn't know if he's a first round pick or a second round pick. So what would be a better way for Tua to come back healthy and take Bama to a national championship and be a number one pick? Because
Listen,
that's what we all know he is.
well, listen, I would be happy. I would still say, even if Tua is going to be a second round pick, he needs to go this year for the interest of the rest of his career and where he wants to go. Even if that
Mm-hmm.
means him being back up somewhere, to give him a year's rest, it's probably something he would need. But like I mentioned a couple weeks ago, what would be crazy was, and there's some people talking like it could happen, is that a lot of people are wanting Tom Brady to move on. So you get the Patriots, and who's a team that could waste kind of just be like, oh, we'll give it a shot, first rounder on a quarterback, and you bring Tua on, and so you move from Brady to Tua,
And that's when I would just turn the TV off. I would turn the draft off
yeah.
and just not be. I would not do football next year. Cancel the show. Because I can't sit through another Patriot dynasty. I can't do it. I refuse to do it. It's not happening. Brady needs to retire, and then the Patriots need to go down to being like a 1-win team for like the next 20 years.
That's right.
Tired of it.
But I don't want to make this last part all about Tua, but I'm just saying, if I really do feel like his best interest is to probably be to go in the draft, because you can't tell me that no team out of the 32 teams is going to look at Tua and be like, we're not going to kind of take a shot at this guy. Can't tell me that. You can't tell me like a Rams wouldn't want to be like, yeah, that may be not a bad pickup. you know?
or a Cincinnati or Chargers. Philip Rivers on his way out.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't the Chargers take a look at him? I personally see him as the best quarterback on the board. Just from what I've seen, he is definitely. I would put him ahead of Joe Burrow. I would put him ahead of that Oregon quarterback. I mean, he to me bad hip and all, bad ankle, whatever is slowing him down right now that knocked him out for the rest of the season. He is the best quarterback on the board. He would be the best quarterback on the board this year. He'd be the best quarterback on the board next year. It would be silly if he fell out of the first round in
Yeah.
this draft.
The only
So,
reason, and this would be interesting to think about it in this perspective though too, is if they're coming back in teams like Miami, teams like Cincinnati, they're saying, "Hey, we're still interested in you." Is
mm-hmm.
Tua almost like saying, "Well, I don't want to play for those teams. I may just play for Alabama one more year to bypass this."
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
because
very well.
there's that thought too. Because
Mm-hmm.
a year, I mean, who would want to walk into a culture like that? I don't. I think, what I would say about the Dolphins situation is I think they've got a coach and a team that are trying. I just think some of the management are dumping players just to try to rebuild. But I think
Yeah,
some of that plays into it. But anyways, enough about Tua. But I think we're both thinking he should probably still come out just based on do you risk one more year of it getting worse for Tua, like injury wise,
and
Um,
I'll say one more thing on to you know for those that are pro him coming back to Bama. Um, his his career at Bama, I don't think he wants it to end like this. I don't think he just wants to limp off the field. I think he wants to leave Tuscaloosa on his own power and with a possible championship. I just don't think he wants his legacy to end like this in Bama. And so I could see that being a reason, and because the top teams in the draft, that have a shot at him are terrible, but I just don't see him leaving like this,
yeah,
you know. But that's what I've got on him. We'll talk about the draft and of the players and all that stuff,
yeah,
in
yeah.
February
When we
and
get
April.
when
But
we get closer to that.
yeah, yeah,
So the interesting thing is we have the playoffs still. You got Ohio State, LSU, Clemson, and Georgia. Here's a
hmm
scenario. One of the most interesting scenarios that could happen. What if Georgia beats LSU? Do you think that LSU should still be in the playoffs? I'm not saying that it's going to happen. It probably won't. But let's just say it did.
it would be kind of the situation that correct me where I'm wrong, that Bama was in a couple years ago. They lost in their conference championship, right? Or they didn't win the conference, or they weren't in the
They weren't in
conference
the conference
championship.
championship. They lost. I think once again they lose to Auburn and get in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then they won the national championship that
Right.
year.
Yep.
Okay. I kind of feel like if you lose your conference game, you shouldn't be in the playoffs. But at the same time, the playoffs are supposed to be the four best teams in college football. Some will argue that and say that like number 5 Utah is better than Georgia. I don't know. I've not watched Utah play this year, but I can't if Georgia gets lucky, and I will say lucky, and beats LSU, I cannot see the playoffs without LSU in them. Because to me, I feel like LSU should be the number one team. Because I don't believe Ohio State is the best team in college football. I think that sits with LSU. So, yeah, I still see LSU being in the playoffs if they were to, lose to Georgia, who shouldn't be in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I think it'd be a lot of controversy, and everybody would be like, we got to do an 8 or 16 playoff after that.
Yeah.
So if you're a proponent of that, you may be rooting to do that. You may be rooting that
Mm-hmm.
if you want a bigger pool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I I would keep Georgia and LSU both in it if it comes down to that. Um, yeah. So
I would kick Georgia out when they lose this Saturday. No, they
well,
need to be bumped down.
I was saying not if if Georgia loses. I'm saying if Georgia won,
Oh, okay. Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
would you keep Georgia and LSU? But if Georgia, yeah, no, you kick Georgia out if they're obviously not going to be in it. My other question is if Utah beats Oregon and then you've got either Baylor or Oklahoma. So if Oklahoma beats Baylor and Utah beats Oregon, who do you got? And me personally, I kind of am a proponent of I think the Big 12 teams are better than the Pac 12 teams. I think the Big
Mm-hmm.
12 is a stronger conference overall. I think Oklahoma is a stronger team. I think Utah is a very good team and shouldn't be overlooked. I think where they're at is very much of where they should be, very balanced on both sides of the ball. But
Mm-hmm.
just strength of conference and kind of all things playing into it, um, I would be a more of a proponent of Oklahoma getting in over
Mm-hmm.
Utah.
Yeah.
But what's weird is if Baylor wins, I think I would almost choose Utah over Baylor, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but
I don't know.
I kind of like that Oklahoma um, jumping and getting into the college football playoffs.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so. But I don't know. That's the other question that that would be learned this week.
Mm-hmm.
What's be crazy is if Ohio State lost to like I think it's Penn State. I think they play Penn State.
Wisconsin.
Oh, they play Wisconsin. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if Ohio State beats Wisconsin or Wisconsin beats Ohio State, like what'll happen then too? Like, there's obvious. I think Clemson because they play in the weakest ACC conference that they're in. Um, and yeah, so it comes down to would you have Oklahoma or would you have Utah? I think that's what it kind of boils down to.
I want to see Utah in there just because, like, who would have thought Utah would be ranked number 5?
Right, right.
Like that's just crazy. I love college football. I've been rooting for Oklahoma, kind of hush hush because I'm a Miami Hurricanes fan and we don't like Oklahoma. I've been kind of rooting for Oklahoma back whenever Bama was still in the top 4. Because I love to see the games where the former player plays his former team, and so I was rooting for Oklahoma to get into the top 4 and possibly play Bama,
Yeah,
and see that Jalen Hurts to a game.
yeah,
That's not going to happen. But I'm kind of like, I think I'm with you, man. The Big 12 is a better conference than the Pac 12, and so I feel like Oklahoma. If I'm looking at it right now, I don't think Clemson should be in the top 4. Their next game is number 23 Virginia, and I just don't think Clemson is the best team in the top 10. And I feel like Oklahoma or Utah deserves to be there based on who they've played more than Clemson does. And so I'm kind of rooting for Virginia, which I know Clemson's going to roll over them, but Clemson's the only team, and Georgia, I guess, because I just don't feel like Georgia is a top 4 team. But Clemson and Georgia, I would both take out of the top 4 and put a Utah, Baylor, or an Oklahoma in there because I feel like they um, deserve it better. And,
Right.
um, so that's me though.
Yeah. Well, that is the look at kind of where we're at in college football. We'll definitely be looking at it more as this week draws to an end with all the conference championship games. So there's still be some things that could happen, some
Hmm.
unknowns that could happen. Like you said, I mean, you could see a Utah or Oklahoma both get in if some blue people things lose, jumbled, and everything happens.
Yeah.
So yeah, fun week, Jamie. Great week. So
Yes.
that'll wrap it up for tonight. Like we always say, leave us a comment. Let us know what you like, or maybe something that we should talk about, or something you
Hmm.
disagree with us about. Maybe we need to look at it in a different way. Hey, let us know in the
Yeah.
comments about what you're thinking. Anything else to add, Jamie?
No, just happy to be back and ready to get back in the role and just thanks for watching and love you guys.
All right. We will see you later.